Hey, it's the Busy Bee Mom, and today I am working on altering a pair of dress slacks. They are too big. Just bought these for my son a year or two ago. Not very long, and he's lost a lot of weight, and they're too big. So we're going to alter them. So first thing you're going to need is a seam ripper. These happen to have, we're going to take it in along the back seam. These happen to have a belt loop right there. So we need a seam ripper so we can take that belt loop off. So we're going to do that real quick. All right, we got our belt loop off. Put this someplace safe because you're going to need to sew it back on, so don't lose it. We are in the center back seam in between the two pockets. Now we need to open up this waistband is folded over. We need to open this up. It's just tacked in a few places. Depending on who made your pants, it'll be tacked differently. Just going to pop this open. Be careful not to cut your fabric. There we go. Easy peasy. We want to get it to lay flat. So, see, our original seam is right here. There's actually room for them to be let out. If you needed to make them bigger, we're going to take them in though. So I want to get this to lay flat. Because I'm going to take in, I'm going to go in an inch. So that'll make him 2 inches smaller. Honestly, he was in a hurry. He had them on. I just walked up and I went like this. And I was like, does that feel good? As I'm pinching, he's like, that's about right. And I just looked at my fingers. I'm like, oh, that's about an inch on either end. So it wasn't a real formal fitting, but he's just got to get through the wedding on Saturday. And then I'm sure next time he wears them in another year or two, they will need altering again. So, alrighty then. So, now the question is, we're going to come over and we're going to sew, but then we need to taper that. And how far down do you go to taper it? So let's get it laying flat. You got to kind of see where you think it's going to come in and look good. I mean, the crotch is all the way down here, so we want to get, I'd say we want to get past the crotch curve. So that's about here. So I think if we go from, just patch the crotch curve when we start getting on the straight, then we'll come up. Now, if you only take them in like a little bit, you don't have to go so far down, but I'm taking in a full inch, so I'm going to go down about as far as I can to get rid of that. Okay, I've got my tailor's chalk, some pins, and a ruler. We're all set. Let's mark 1 inch. Wait, this is in picas. It's not a ruler. Here, let's get some standardized measurements going here. Inch. Now through the waistband part and the top, you're going to have a straight 1 inch. You don't want to start your taper until you're past your waistband. So ruler's a little bit of oversized. I can't figure out where any of my little rulers went. Probably because they're little. They hide. So we're going to mark 1 inch. Basically. And then just below there is we start our taper. And we're going to go down to, so there's my curve My curve is straightening out. So right about there, I think it'd be good. Now we need to draw a line connecting those 2 points. The hard part about this is to make sure that this line is straight. That doesn't make sense, but you don't want this to be kind of curved and wonky. You want it to be as flat and straight as you can get it. Oh yeah, that's gonna work because it comes straight here. The seam straight here starts to curve in. I'm just gonna go out and up. I think that'll work beautifully because there's my seam coming off my crotch is right there. So I'm just gonna go zoop. Okay, we're gonna pin. The point of me pinning this is to make sure that my back fabric is laying flat. So I'm using my fingers to feel to make sure that second layer back there is smooth and flat. Work our way up. Use your sense of touch a lot for sewing to give you clues. Now, right here, it's very important that when I sew this, this lines up. You don't want it a little higher, a little lower. Of course, the belt loop would probably cover it, but anyway, try to get that to line up. Got a little bit of a kind of an angle coming in there. I don't know if I like that or not. So we're going to put a pin right there where that seam is. I'm going to flip it over, make sure it hits the seam on the other side. So that should be good. Now this doesn't want to lay very flat because it's also tacked right here. So it's kind of fighting me a little bit. So we're just going to put a bunch of pins in. Line up those. I always work too far away. We're going to line up those top 2 edges. And just put some pins in. Don't pin that down. It's got like elastic built in for a comfort band. That's nice. A little bit of stretch. Alright. As I sew, I'll pull my pins out, except for maybe that one. So they're not in the way. Alright, we're going to sew it. I'm going to go over to my machine. I'm going to start at the top, back stitch a little bit, and go down. I could start at the bottom if I had marked it on this side. Does that make sense? Because I can't put all of this bulk in my machine. Probably would have been better to start from this end, but then I would have had to have marked it on this side. So, because I marked it on this side, the seam allowance goes this way. Okay, I'll be right back. Alright, let's see how we did. There's a lot of bulk. Oh, somebody's texting me. There's a lot of bulk up here. I was worried that on this end it was all mashed up, but it looks pretty good on this end. Everything's flat. It's supposed to be flat. Well, that looks pretty good right there. It's not going to lay in yet until we take our old seam out, but I just want to flip it over and see how that looks. I don't see any signs of it suddenly taking a dip or a dive. It looks like it's laying pretty good. I mean, the real test is going to be when, obviously, when someone's wearing it, but I think it should be okay. It looks kind of like it's V'ing in a little bit, oddly enough, but like I didn't have that quite flat. Huh. But I think it's okay. So next step is we're going to take out our original seam allowance. Looks like it's chain stitched, so that might be easy. But we want to take it down to where we joined up, because you want to be able to lay this bulk flat Normally if I was altering like a women's dress, I'd cut off all this extra bulk, but men's slacks are meant to be let out, taken in, let out, taken in, because a good suit you can have for a lot of years, and you're only going to wear it a few times. So seam ripper and take that out. Okay, we got the old stitching out. It was chain stitched, but it was like stitched 3 times. So I had 3 different times I had to get it out, and then it kept running into its old self and getting all tangled up. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to press this flat so that that seam allowance lies nice and flat. Give that a good pressing, especially up here where all this bulk is. Get that pressed. Alright, ironed. Now we're going to try to flip it. See how it lays. Okay. Now before, these corners were turned under a little bit to keep them looking nicer. I just flattened that out because I was going to do my angles a little different. So, how do I want to do this? I think I'm going to tack it right there. I folded under my extra a little bit, and I'm going to tack all my layers together right there on that end. Pin it first. Then I'll just do a hand tack stitch. This is like such a dark color, and it's the light in my sewing room's not good, and it's just a lot. It's hard to see. Okay, we're gonna tack that there. Tack that there, and I'm not gonna go all the way through to the good layer. I'm just gonna go through the seam allowance that we used up through there. And then I'm gonna do more threads. I'm going to stitch this down, and when I do this I'm going to go through all the layers, but I'm going to make sure when I sew it on this side that I am in my seam allowance right there. Okay, so we're going to do that. That's just going to be some hand stitching. So tack this, don't go through to your good fabric, just attach all those layers, and then right in your seam here go through and attach that. So I'm just going to get a needle and thread and some black thread and do that. Alright, the last thing is to sew our belt loop back on, which there's like 3 different sewing stitches on this thing. So we got to sew, looks like we got to sew across there, fold it over, sew across there, fold this over, and sew across there, which means this is lower than that. Well, those are lined up with it, but okay, well, start at the top, go down, flip, pin where it needs to go. Alright, we'll sew that on. Okay, for some reason, sewing on that belt loop proved to be way more challenging than it should have been. So I'm just going to fast forward through my bungled as I'm trying to show you how to do it, and I keep screwing it up. So I'm just going to fast forward through that. So just sew the thing on. It shouldn't be that hard. Why it was for me, I don't know. Sometimes you just don't line things up right. And then I had back stitched over it a couple times, and I had to take all that stitching out and black thread on black fabric. Anyway, it was a mess. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned how to alter some pants, and it will be useful to you. You have a great day. Thanks for watching.